one little German farmhouse, and they greatly expanded onto it. They took this little house, they added an upstairs unit. They would also add a wing on the left and on the right for each of the families. They would each have their separate wings of a house. Bedrooms would be upstairs in addition. And they would also add, of course, these Corinthian columns that are in front of us today. They would put in this wraparound porch and the cast iron that we see here today, making it a Greek revival style plantation home. Now, these sisters, they were very eccentric. They were socialites. They were really kind of the who's who of San Antonio, and they loved to have these parties here. And this was a place of grand parties and political fundraisers for a very long time. Now, since 1842, we have had about 150 people die on the property since the battle took place. We've had over 90 people die within just 2 days from those battles, and the rest of the deaths would be from silvers, from influenza, and just from old age on the property. And so perhaps all of these things, the Native American burial site, the creeks that perhaps support paranormal energy, and of course the haunting stories left behind by the owners, perhaps is why this place is so haunted to this day. Now the Holbrooks, they would eventually decide that they needed to give this house away to one of their children. And they would do that to Jolene Woodstreet. And Jolene Woodstreet would live here with her husband, Park Street Jr., who was a prominent attorney for several years. They would actually raise 2 kids here, Park Street Jr. and a daughter named Jolene, or referred to as Jean here. But both Jolene and Park Street would die in a very strange and mysterious way. And both of their deaths are associated with the house. And so once we get inside, we'll break that down just a little bit. I just want to give you a little bit of information about the property and about how many deaths have occurred, and perhaps a little bit of the Native American stuff. Before we go inside, do we have any questions? All right, let's go ahead and go inside.
Look at the pineapple and the cupcake thing, huh?
Oh yeah, I'm scared.
Wow, you scared? Oh yeah.
Feel free to take a seat wherever you'd like to.
It's pretty in here.
I was gonna say, go ahead.
Please feel free to grab a seat wherever. All right, so I do want to point out a couple of the things that are original to the house, and that's the floor that you are on. The wood floor that we are at is original to 1887. It was part of the Mahler's home, as well as the fireplace, but only the bottom portion. The top portion was added after, but the bottom portion is original to the Mahler's home. Everything else in this room was added and or reconstructed by the Holbrook family. Now, the Holbrooks, like I told you, they loved to throw parties. This was a place of parties. This was a place of weddings. This was really kind of an event place. And they would call this room the ballroom because they could take all the furniture out and they could bring a band and have a very nice little celebration in this room. And that's why it was referred to as the ballroom. Over the years, this has also been one of the more paranormally active rooms in the house as well. This room would have everything from full body apparitions to doors opening and closing on themselves, mysterious knocking when nobody is around. We've experienced all kinds of things over the years in that regard. Now, one of the more haunting experiences that we've had is that at the end of a nighttime tour, we'll have to lock up. Usually the family that lives here, they're already going to bed, and we'll lock up at the end of the night. And as we were locking up this front door, I would clearly remember an instance where we closed that front door, and we were just about to turn the little latch to lock it, and it just started opening up on its own, and it opened fully for us, just as if somebody was just opening and coming in. Absolutely nobody was there. We were able to close it right back down. So that's one of the experiences that we've had here. We've also had many experiences where people will stand right where this sofa is, and they'll take a selfie with this mirror, with themselves or with a loved one, and they'll come back and they'll look at that photo, and they will often see a white wisp around them, or perhaps a gray or dark wisp around them. Very common things that people have experienced here. One of the other things that I think is very haunting is phantom music. Music that begins to play out of nowhere. And this piano right over here, we've had a couple of occasions where as we are locking up, some of the keys just start playing on its own, no kind of song or actually anything specific, just a little bit of sound that originates from that. Now, do we have any questions about this room? Okay. Now, we are a good-sized group, I'm going to try to get us all into this next space, but we're going to be a little bit crowded. Some of us might want to be in the hall if you feel a little bit crowded in the next room that we're going to visit. So, if you'll follow me this way.
Why?
The
There's
photos are
nothing.
okay inside.
Yeah, photos are okay inside.
Nothing
There's
to
no
mind.
problem at all.
It's just a bunch of people that have died trying to get Texas its independence.
Those that are friendly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially if you're Texan. I'll get your picture.
There's a little room right here. If anyone wants to step right over here. This is us right. Okay, wonderful. All right, everybody. So, if anybody has ever seen the Ghost Adventures episode about this house, you may be familiar with this room. Has anybody ever seen that Ghost Adventures episode? Okay, a couple of us. Well, right before that Ghost Adventures episode aired or recorded here, about 6 months before this, Joanne's mother, the current owner's mother, passed away in this room. Now, Faye, she really kind of declined very quickly. That was her name. And Faye kind of within a month deteriorated. And her daughter, Joanne, knew that she did not have a lot of time left with her mom. And before her mom died, she actually had this conversation with her. And she said, you know, Mom, there are a lot of spirits here. I've experienced a lot of strange things, things that I can't explain. And I want to know that if you come back to see me, if you come back to visit this place after your death, I want to know it's you and not somebody else. And she asked her mom, could we have a code word that just the two of us know? And her mom said, okay, sure. Now, one thing about Faye was that she loved to gamble. She was a big gambler. She loved to sit in front of a slot machine for an entire night and just play until the sun came up. And she really wanted to get back to this little town named Bossier to do some gambling. She knew she wasn't going to get to go. She already knew that in her heart. So that was her code word. That was what she and Joanne had agreed on. And so, about 6 months after her death, they did this experiment. The Ghost Adventures came in. Zach Baggins had thought he wanted to communicate directly with Faye to see if he could get this response, see if he could get that code word. And so him and his crew, they came in and they put a spirit box on this bed right here. And they just kind of let it do its thing by sweeping through stations and seeing if they could hear anything come through. I think after about 13 minutes of the experiment, they actually got the word Bossier come through, and it was very clear. Immediately, Joanne knew what it meant, and it was a very emotional moment. You can actually go back on that episode and see how emotional she got over that. However, Zach Baggins, he thought he heard "I love you, Mom." It wasn't until they went back and they really clearly listened that it was pretty evident that it was the word Bossier. Now, before this even happened, Joe had experienced something kind of extraordinary with the spirit of her mom. Now, before her mom died, she had these conversations. Her mom believed in the spirit world here, and believed that she might come back in the afterlife at some point here. And right after her death, this house was burglarized. She died in October, and in November, the house was burglarized. This room, her room, was very targeted. Now, Joanne hadn't went through her mom's belongings yet, and she had jewelry boxes, she had old photos, she had her purse with all her personal effects, all kinds of little things and precious mementos that meant something to her in her life, and also meant something to her daughter, Joanne. And all of a sudden, these things are all stolen out of this property. She comes home from doing errands, and she's absolutely heartbroken when she realizes all of her mom's belongings are gone. And of course, she files a police report. She thinks about this quite a bit. And she makes the determination that she wants to have a communication session with the spirits here because maybe they know. Maybe they know something. And she knows that this sounds kind of crazy in her head. And her family is even telling her, I don't know if that sounds right. But she does it. And she does this spirit communication session, and she